Imagine a world without laughter. A world where silence weighs heavier than joy, where struggles feel endless and hope seems far away. Now picture a single man with nothing but a small mustache, a funny walk, and a battered hat, who could make millions forget their pain and smile again. That man was Charlie Chaplin. But Chaplin was more than an actor, more than a comedian. He was a legend who rose from the harshest struggles life could throw at him. His journey from poverty, abandonment, and loneliness to becoming the most loved entertainer in the world is not just a story of talent. It's a story of resilience, courage, and the power of never giving up. Every time Chaplin stumbled, he turned his pain into art. Every time life tried to silence him, he found a way to speak louder, through laughter, through creativity, through unshakable determination. That is why, even decades after his death, his work continues to inspire and teach us that no matter how broken life feels, there is always a reason to rise again. So in this video, we're not just revisiting the career of Charlie Chaplin. We're uncovering the powerful life lessons hidden in his struggles and triumphs. Stay with me, because by the end of this journey, you'll see why Chaplin's story is not only history, it's motivation for every single one of us today. And if you believe that true legends are not born, but made through hardship and perseverance, then make sure you subscribe, like, and join us on this journey, because what you're about to hear could change the way you see your own struggles. On April 16, 1889, in the heart of London, a child was born who would one day make the whole world laugh. But his beginnings were anything but joyful. This child was Charlie Chaplin. His parents were both stage performers chasing dreams under the dim glow of theater lights. His father, though talented, was consumed by alcoholism and soon abandoned the family. His mother, Hannah, was left alone to raise Charlie and his half-brother, Sidney, struggling to keep food on the table. The streets of London in those days were unforgiving, especially for a family with no steady income. Charlie's earliest memories were not of applause or laughter, but of hunger, loneliness, and watching his mother fight against the crushing weight of poverty. Yet even in those dark moments, there was a spark inside him, a spark that hardship could not extinguish. It was in this environment of struggle that the foundation of Chaplin's resilience was built. The boy who often went to bed hungry would one day give the world something priceless: hope, laughter, and the belief that even the poorest beginnings can lead to the richest legacies. Stay with me, because the next part of Chaplin's story shows how this young boy, despite his pain, found his first taste of the stage, and with it, a glimpse of his destiny. Picture this: a crowded music hall in London, dim lights and the audience buzzing with anticipation. Hannah, Charlie's mother, steps on stage to perform. But that night something goes terribly wrong. Her voice gives out mid-performance. The crowd grows restless and humiliation looms. In that moment of crisis, a small figure emerges. 5-year-old Charlie, barely tall enough to reach the spotlight, he walks onto the stage. At first, the audience laughs at the sight of such a tiny boy standing in front of them. But then Charlie begins to sing. His innocent voice fills the hall, and to everyone's surprise, he doesn't just sing, he entertains. He mimics, he gestures, he makes them laugh. The room that moments earlier was filled with impatience now bursts with applause. For young Charlie, this was more than just a performance. It was a revelation. That night, he discovered the magic of laughter. The stage became his refuge, a place where even a poor, hungry boy could shine brighter than the struggles that surrounded him. It was the spark that ignited a lifelong fire. A dream was born in that moment: to perform, to connect, and to bring joy to people no matter how heavy their burdens were. And as we follow Charlie's journey, you'll see how this single night planted the seed that grew into one of the most remarkable careers in entertainment history. Just as life seemed to be giving young Charlie a glimpse of hope, reality came crashing down harder than ever. His mother, Hannah, who had always been the fragile pillar holding the family together, began to lose her grip on reality. Her mental health collapsed under the crushing weight of poverty and loneliness. Eventually, she was sent to an asylum, leaving Charlie and his half-brother Sidney completely alone. 2 little boys, abandoned by their father, and now without their mother, were left to face the cold, merciless streets of London. They weren't just poor, they were destitute. Nights were spent hungry, shivering, and uncertain of where the next meal would come from. Sometimes they begged, other times they scavenged. Every single day became a fight for survival. Imagine being a child, watching the world pass by while carrying the burden of hunger, fear, and hopelessness. For Charlie, these struggles weren't temporary, they shaped him. The laughter he would one day share with millions was born out of the pain he endured in silence. But instead of breaking him, the hardship built something remarkable inside. It carved resilience into his heart and gave him a deeper understanding of human suffering, something he would later transform into powerful comedy that made the world forget its sorrows, even if just for a moment. And yet, this was only the beginning. The road ahead would take Charlie through even harsher realities, workhouses, separation, and unimaginable trials. But with each step, the boy who had nothing was unknowingly shaping the man who would give the world everything. At just 7 years old, when most children are still wrapped in the safety of play and innocence, Charlie was thrust into one of the harshest realities of his time, the workhouse. These institutions designed to house the poor were anything but compassionate. Cold walls, strict discipline, and endless labor defined his childhood. For Charlie, it wasn't a place of shelter, it was a prison for the poor. There, he witnessed the cruel side of society. Families were torn apart, and his own mother's decline only deepened the pain. With Hannah locked away in an asylum, Charlie and Sydney were left to navigate a world that treated poverty as a crime. Every day was a reminder that the world could be merciless, and no one was coming to rescue them. But rather than allowing bitterness to consume him, Charlie began to develop something far more powerful: resilience. The same boy who went hungry, who wore tattered clothes, who endured humiliation, started to build an inner strength that no hardship could crush. It was in those dark, unforgiving years that Charlie's determination was born. The determination to rise above, to prove that he was destined for more than suffering. Little did the world know, the child laboring in the shadows of a workhouse would one day shine brighter than anyone could imagine. And from that pit of despair, Charlie carried with him not just scars, but a burning dream. A dream that would push him toward the stage, and toward a destiny no one could have predicted. As Charlie grew older, survival remained his first priority. To keep himself and Sydney afloat, he took on any odd job he could find. Washing dishes in greasy kitchens, making toys for pennies, delivering newspapers in the bustling streets of London. These jobs didn't pay much, but they kept him alive. Yet even in the middle of struggle, there was one place where Charlie's spirit truly came alive: the streets. With nothing but his wit, his expressive face, and a natural sense of timing, he began performing for passers-by. He sang, he mimicked, he made exaggerated gestures that drew laughter from strangers. For a boy who had known only hunger and hardship, the sound of applause was intoxicating. Little by little, word began to spread about the boy who could make people forget their troubles, even for a moment. Laughter became his currency, talent his only weapon against poverty. Each performance, no matter how small, brought him closer to his dream: to become an entertainer, to stand on a stage not as a poor street child, but as a performer people admired. It wasn't easy, and recognition came slowly, but Charlie's determination never wavered. The dream to perform burned brighter than his circumstances, and with every step, he was moving closer to the destiny that awaited him. And soon, opportunity would come knocking, his first big break on the stage, where he would prove that the boy from the streets was destined for something far greater. At just 14 years old, Charlie's life took a turn that would change everything. He was invited to join a small theater group called the 8 Lancashire Lads. It wasn't glamorous, and his role was minor at first, but for Charlie, it was the beginning of a dream taking shape. He worked harder than anyone else, studying every movement, every line, and practicing late into the night. His natural gift for expressions and timing quickly set him apart from the other boys. Directors began to notice that this thin, hungry kid had something different, an energy that pulled people in, even when he wasn't speaking a single word. By the time Charlie was 16, his persistence paid off in a way no one expected. He landed a major role in the stage play Sherlock Holmes. For the first time, he wasn't just a background performer, he was stepping into the spotlight. Night after night, audiences applauded him. Critics called him talented, and whispers of his rising stardom began to spread. For a boy who once begged for food on the streets, standing on a real stage in front of real audiences was nothing short of miraculous. This wasn't just acting, it was validation. Proof that his dream wasn't a fantasy, proof that the boy from poverty had the power to rise. And yet this was only the beginning. A much bigger stage far from London was waiting for him. America and Hollywood were just around the corner. In 1910, a golden opportunity came knocking for young Charlie. He was invited to join Fred Karno's famous comedy troupe, a group that was touring across the Atlantic in the United States. For Charlie, this wasn't just another performance job. It was a chance to step onto the world's biggest stage. When the ship docked and Charlie first set foot in America, he was overwhelmed. The streets were bigger, the people louder, and the energy was unlike anything he had ever felt in London. Cities buzzed with excitement, theaters were grander, and everywhere he looked, he saw opportunity. Deep inside, he felt it. This is where I belong. This is where I will rise. As the troupe performed across the country, Charlie's unique style started drawing attention. His timing, his expressions, and his ability to make people laugh without saying a word made him stand out. Hollywood, the dream factory of the world, was watching. By 1913, those first opportunities began to appear. Studio doors opened, producers wanted to test his talent, and Charlie realized something powerful. America wasn't just a tour stop. It was destiny. Here, he would no longer be a poor boy struggling to survive. Here, he would become a star, and soon he would create a character that would not only change his life forever, but also change the entire history of cinema. In 1913, Charlie Chaplin's life changed forever. Keystone Studios, one of the pioneering film companies of the silent era, offered him a role. At first, it was just a small part in a short film, but Charlie saw an opportunity to do something no one had ever done before. He didn't just want to act. He wanted to create a character the world would never forget. So, piece by piece, he built him, the tramp. A bowler hat slightly too small, a shabby suit that hung awkwardly, oversized shoes, a cane, a toothbrush mustache, and of course that unforgettable walk, both clumsy and graceful at the same time. The tramp wasn't just a costume. He was a symbol. He represented the poor, the dreamers, the outsiders, and those who kept smiling even when life knocked them down. When Charlie first stepped in front of the camera as the tramp, audiences were mesmerized. He didn't need words to make people laugh or cry. His expressions, his timing, his movements, everything spoke louder than dialogue ever could. By 1917, in just 4 short years, the world had fallen in love. Posters of the tramp covered cities, movie theaters filled to capacity, and Charlie Chaplin had gone from a hungry boy on the streets of London to an international sensation. He wasn't just famous, he was adored in every country, across every language, across every culture. But Charlie wasn't satisfied with only being a star. Deep inside, he knew he wanted more. He didn't just want to perform in movies, he wanted to control them, shape them, and make films that carried his vision. At a time when Hollywood was rapidly changing, when every studio was rushing to add sound to movies, Charlie Chaplin stood his ground. He was meticulous, obsessive even, about every tiny detail in his work. To him, film was not just about entertainment, it was art, and every frame had to be perfect. But then came the late 1920s, and with it, a revolution in cinema. Talkies. For the first time, actors could speak on screen. Silent films were declared dead. Studio heads, critics, even fellow actors told Chaplin, "If you don't adapt, you'll be forgotten." But Charlie believed something deeper. He believed that true storytelling didn't depend on words, it depended on emotions. A smile, a tear, a simple gesture could say more than 1,000 lines of dialogue. And so in 1931, when the world thought silent films were finished, he released his masterpiece, City Lights. The film was a triumph. Audiences laughed at the tramp's clumsy adventures, but they also cried, especially in its unforgettable final scene, when a blind girl realizes who her true savior is. That moment, played without a single spoken word, remains one of the most powerful scenes in cinema history. With City Lights, Chaplin proved everyone wrong. He showed the world that silence could be louder than words, and that emotions, when expressed with honesty, can move hearts forever. In 1940, when the world was trembling under the shadow of Adolf Hitler and the rise of fascism, Charlie Chaplin made one of the boldest moves of his career. At a time when most of Hollywood remained silent out of fear, Chaplin chose to use the one weapon he had mastered better than anyone else: comedy. He released The Great Dictator, his very first talking film. But this was not just a comedy. It was a mirror held up to tyranny. Chaplin created two roles for himself. One as a humble Jewish barber, the other as a ruthless dictator who bore an uncanny resemblance to Hitler, mustache and all. Through laughter, satire, and brilliant performance, Chaplin exposed the absurdity of hatred, war, and blind power. And then came the moment that would echo through history, the final speech. Standing before the world, Chaplin's character broke the silence with words that transcended cinema. He spoke of humanity over machinery, love over hate, and freedom over oppression. His voice, trembling with emotion, pleaded for a world of kindness and unity. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. That speech became legendary, one of the most powerful ever delivered on film. Even today, more than 80 years later, it continues to inspire millions across the globe. With The Great Dictator, Chaplin proved that comedy could be more than laughter. It could be a weapon against injustice, a voice for the voiceless, and a beacon of hope in humanity's darkest times. For years, Charlie Chaplin had been untouchable, the world's greatest comedian, a filmmaker who shaped Hollywood itself. But fame and power also came with enemies. By the late 1940s, his fierce independence and bold political messages began to make Hollywood uneasy. He was too powerful, too outspoken, too unwilling to bend to the system. Rumors spread. He was accused of things he had never done, painted as dangerous, even called un-American. In truth, Chaplin was not a politician. He was an artist who believed in humanity above politics. But the climate of fear and suspicion in America at the time turned against him. Finally, in 1952, while traveling to London for a film premiere, Chaplin received devastating news. The U.S. government would not allow him to return. The land where he had built his career, the country whose cinema he had revolutionized, had exiled him. Heartbroken, Charlie settled in Switzerland with his wife, Una, and their children. Far from Hollywood, he lived a quiet life, writing, composing music, and spending his days with his family. Though he was away from the bright lights of cinema, the world never forgot him. His films continued to live in the hearts of millions. But Hollywood, deep down, knew it had made a mistake, and years later, it would come calling again. Charlie Chaplin's brilliance on screen was unmatched, but in his personal life, love was never simple. He fell in love quickly, deeply, and often disastrously. His first 3 marriages ended in heartbreak, scandal, and public battles. People whispered, "He can make the whole world laugh, but he cannot find happiness in love." And then everything changed. In 1943, at the age of 54, Chaplin met Una O'Neill, the 18-year-old daughter of playwright Eugene O'Neill. Many criticized the age difference. Many doubted it would last, but this time Charlie had found something real. Una was not only his wife, she was his anchor, his best friend, and his defender when the world turned against him. Together they built a true family. Over the years, they welcomed 8 children, filling Chaplin's once lonely world with the warmth he had been denied in his own childhood. In their beautiful home in Switzerland, he finally found the peace he had been searching for all his life. There, far from the noise of Hollywood, Chaplin spent his final decades writing, reading, and reflecting. He would stroll through his gardens, play with his children, and sometimes watch his old films, smiling at the laughter he had given the world. For the first time, Charlie Chaplin was not just the world's greatest comedian. He was a husband, a father, and a man finally at peace. On December 25, 1977, while the world was celebrating Christmas, Charlie Chaplin quietly took his last breath at the age of 88. The man who had brought joy to millions slipped away peacefully in his sleep at his home in Switzerland. Yet even in death, his story took a strange twist. Just months later, criminals stole his body from the grave, holding it for ransom. But even that plot failed. His remains were recovered and reburied in a secure resting place, where they remain undisturbed. But Charlie Chaplin's true resting place is not in the ground, it lives in the hearts of people everywhere. He is remembered as the greatest comedian the world has ever known, a man who turned his pain, his poverty, and his struggles into timeless laughter. His little tramp character, clumsy, kind, and endlessly hopeful, remains a universal symbol of resilience and humanity. Chaplin's life leaves us with a message that outlives generations. A day without laughter is a day wasted. In those words lies the secret of his genius. He taught us that laughter is not just entertainment, it is survival, it is courage. It is the light we carry through the darkest times. And so Charlie Chaplin's story ends where it began, with laughter. The laughter that healed him, the laughter that united the world, and the laughter that will never fade.